Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the ACCESS Blockbusters Pod. Welcome back to episode number 102 of the ACCESS Blockbusters Pod. And today, it's going to be exciting because we're going to take some time at the beginning of this episode to answer some of your guys' questions from our episode 100 AMA. Thank you guys so much for submitting those. And then, of course, if you want to skip ahead, we have the time codes in the description. You can skip ahead to other topics as well. But wanted to dedicate some time up front to really answering some of your guys' questions that you guys had submitted. So thank you guys so much for that for episode 100, episode now 102. And before we get into the episode, as usual, if you haven't subscribed to the ACCESS Blockbusters YouTube channel, make sure to do so. Give this video a like. We are on the road to 2,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for anyone who's joined in the past few months. It has been a joy to really continue on with the podcast and have this discussion with all of you. If you're interested in the audio-only platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Overcast, we're available there as well. And short intro, guys. Let's just get into today's topics. Alrighty, guys, let's start out this podcast with a big thank you for 100 episodes of the ACCESS Blockbusters Pod. I know it's been a couple episodes still, but again, just wanted to really say thank you and follow up on a promise that I made a couple episodes ago. Let's answer some of your questions that you put in to the comment section and sent to me for the AMA. I have a lot of great questions here from some channel subscribers and people who have been on the channel and just really been amazing to just share their thoughts on different things. So I'm really appreciative of that. And without further ado, guys, there are a lot of questions to actually get through. So in order to not make this first AMA segment 20 minutes long, let's get into your questions, shall we? All right, so I'm not going to go in any particular order here. I have the questions lined up on my screen, and we're just going to go through and read them and try to answer them as honestly as we can. So first question up, Silver Screen Edits YouTube. Again, somebody who I've been seeing on the channel for a while now. Super grateful for your support. Thank you so much. And they ask, what are films that have either surprised you or let you down this year and why? I'll answer the latter part of this question first. A film that I think I was particularly let down by is Mickey 17. Because I've been on the record of saying I'm just not the biggest fan of Parasite. I know that's perhaps controversial and whatnot. And I'm not saying it's incompetently made or anything like that. But, I just think it's not quite the movie for me, tonally and things like that. But I respect Bong Joon-ho as a filmmaker very, very much, and I was really looking forward to what he had in store after Parasite. So Mickey 17, the trailers looked really interesting, the concept looked really interesting, and I was just really disappointed by that movie this year. I don't know. I mean, it really just didn't do it for me, and I think the more time that passes, the less I like that movie. Honorable mention goes to Snow White. I guess dishonorable mention. I don't know if I was expecting a whole lot from that movie, but it just wasn't the best movie for me. Movie that surprised me this year. I'm not going to say that there's been a movie that I was really not looking forward to this year that just came out of nowhere and shocked me. I will say a couple films. Fantastic Four First Steps. I don't think I was expecting to love it that much. At the time I said top 5 MCU movies. I don't know if I'd say top 5 anymore, but definitely top 10 for me. It is just, I love that movie. And another movie that is in that vein is the How to Train Your Dragon live action remake. Again, we can have a conversation. We have had conversations about should they be made and what should we do about these live action shot for shot remakes. But in a vacuum, as somebody who has great nostalgia and emotion and connection to that original animated film, I quite enjoyed that movie. So those were the two films that surprised me this year thus far. Moving on to the next question from Silver Screen Edits YouTube. What's the most valuable thing you've learned from doing the podcast for 100 episodes now? Congratulations. Thank you so much. Again, really, 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 really appreciate it. Most valuable thing I've learned. Honestly, I think that in doing the podcast and just having my voice out there and sharing thoughts and talking about all sorts of things, sometimes controversial, again, controversial in the scope of movies, so not, in the grand scheme of things, we're just talking about movies here and it's all fun and games. But I think that really, to me, the most important thing that I've learned is to be true to myself and not to not care about what other people have to say, because the whole point of doing this is for discourse, right? The whole point of doing this is so that we can have a discussion, so that we can talk about things and we can really, really, engage in this conversation, right? But rather to just be honest and have my opinions said without fearing what other people have to say about it, but also thinking the same about other people, right? If other people have differing opinions than me, then that's totally great, and we can have that discussion as well. And I think also approaching it with positivity, right? Because so much of discourse and so much of movie discussion these days, I think is formed around negativity. And so I've really, in trying to have a positive mentality about this, all of this, I think has been super, super valuable. And I've been really glad to have been able to do that for 100 episodes. So that is that. Next question up is from Superwise, a good friend of the channel. Thank you, Superwise, for all of your questions and for continuing to just be here and pop in the comments. I really, really appreciate it. Superwise, he asks, which composers are on your wish list to make some iconic scores for upcoming heavy hitters, Brave and the Bold, Wonder Woman, X-Men, etc.? That is a great question. I am a big fan of music in movies. I love movie musicals and I love soundtracks and things like that. Honestly, I think, I think hearing the people that have been kind of the up and comers or the heavy hitters thus far, I think would be good to continue to hear from. So Hans Zimmer and Michael Giacchino are two obvious names that stick out to me, but those are the obvious ones. They've done tons of superhero movie fare. I am totally blanking on the composers of Shang-Chi and Thunderbolts. I thought those scores were quietly underrated as well. I kind of like them. So yeah, I don't have any particular names in mind, but I think that continuing to hear those composers. Oh, and the other big one is Natalie. I'm totally blanking on her name, but the composer of Loki. Is it Natalie Holt, I want to say? Would love to see her do some other scores. I don't know if she would fit in in a Batman movie or something like that, because she, her score is very particular to Loki, but I would love to see her do something else. I think that she was great. So those would be my answers. Superwise's next question. Assuming the Hulk's rights revert back to Marvel and they can make a solo movie past Secret Wars, again, that is an assumption, that we all are hoping for, but Superwise continues. Do you want to see Mark Ruffalo stay, or are you looking for a recast? And he adds, for context, Mark has said that he's still talking to Marvel about what that looks like. So again, big assumption. Is Marvel going to be able to retain the rights to the Hulk? Are they going to be able to get it? Are they going to be able to make a solo film? Let's assume that they are post-Secret Wars. I'm going to say I actually would like to see a fresh take on the Hulk at that point, barring one thing. If there is one Hulk story that I think Mark Ruffalo would be good for post-Secret Wars, I think it is a Maestro type story. And who's to say that they're not going to do that in Secret Wars and Doomsday? For those of you guys who don't know, Maestro is a version of the Hulk that is a very wise, and I want to say he was a part of Secret Wars. I can't remember, but he's sort of like a Grandmaster type from the vague knowledge that I have of Maestro. So if they were to do a story around that, I think great. That is a version, because let's be honest, Mark Ruffalo is not getting any younger. We'll see what version of the Hulk he brings to Spider-Man Brand New Day, but he is not getting any younger. And I think that for a kind of an older version of Hulk, I think that would be very interesting. But if we're going to go younger version of Hulk, I think I would like to see a recast at that point. That is just me. So thank you for that question. Next question up is from, I think it's Jose Man, 33221. Again, I apologize if I mispronounce any of your names. And they ask, two questions here. Thoughts on Daniel RPK saying Marvel is thinking about keeping Hugh Jackman after Secret Wars? Okay, so first of all, Daniel RPK. I keep up, like I've been saying, I keep up with some of these leakers and scoopers, right? Daniel RPK being one of them, because I'm just curious to see what they have to say. But we've always said on the channel that these kinds of sources are not the be-all, end-all for my news and my information. Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, Rap. Those are the kinds of sources that I take to the bank, right? But that being said, Daniel RPK is right sometimes. So if he says that Marvel is thinking about keeping Hugh Jackman around after Secret Wars, I'm not going to deny that. It could very well be possible. I love Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman is one of my, if not my single favorite actor in Hollywood. I love Hugh Jackman. I don't want him after Secret Wars. I want him to do one or two more appearances as Wolverine, if any more, and that would be in Doomsday and Secret Wars, and that's it. I think if we're going to do X-Men, I want the X-Men to be fresh, I want the X-Men to be new, and I want all of the X-Men to be different. I just don't see the value in keeping Hugh Jackman around after Secret Wars. I would love to see a different take on Wolverine. And that is as somebody who loves Logan, who just did a segment saying X-Men Days of Future Past is one of the most underrated comic book movies ever, who loves Hugh Jackman. I would like to see a fresh face play Wolverine. And another question from Jose, man. Superior fan cast, Taron Egerton or Matt Wood? And to that question, I say I don't really have an opinion, to be honest with you. Because again, a lot of the fan casts that we have, I think for the versions of the movies that we end up seeing, they wouldn't work as well as we think they would, right? I think like Heath Ledger, got a ton of backlash at the time of his casting. Hugh Jackman himself got a ton of backlash at the time of the casting. Pedro Pascal was not the pick that everyone else had when they were casting Mr. Fantastic. So I think, to be honest with you, I don't have a super strong opinion over any kind of fan cast for these kinds of films. I just want to see what kind of direction that they go with the movie in general. Jose Man's next question. Do you want to see OG Avenger recasts like Tony and Steve out of the gate in the soft reboot or down the line? That's a good question. I think neither. And if any, maybe down the line. The reason I say that is because maybe we stray away from those characters for a little while now. I don't think you need to do the MCU with those characters immediately. I just don't. I think that you can do the MCU with other characters like Spider-Man, Miles Morales even, with Doctor Strange, with a version of the Hulk, I said Doctor Strange. But I think you can do the MCU with the X-Men as well as just the main characters in the MCU for a long time, that I don't think you need to have those characters in there for quite some time. So I would say down the line, meaning that that doesn't mean I want Chris Evans to come back necessarily. It means that I would like the MCU to focus on other characters for a while. And the final question from Jose Man: Heroes for Hire show after soft reboot, are you keeping Mike Coulter and Finn Jones? So that's an interesting question. Actually, there is one more question from Jose Man. I apologize, but this question here: Heroes for Hire show post Secret Wars, are you keeping Mike Coulter and Finn Jones? I would say let's see what they do in Daredevil Born Again Season 2. I would be more inclined to keep Mike Coulter because I've been enjoying him as Luke Cage more so than Finn Jones. But perhaps Finn Jones just needs needs some redemption in the role, much like Hayden Christensen did in Ahsoka as Anakin Skywalker. So if that's the case, and Finn Jones comes out and he's amazing as Iron Fist, then great, keep both of them. But if not, I'm kind of ambivalent, honestly. I don't know if I'd be the most excited for Heroes for Hire as a show anyways, but we'll have to see what the concept is. And the final question from Jose Man, there are still a couple questions after this. What's one thing the MCU is doing better than the DCU right now, and one thing the DCU is doing better than Marvel? That is an excellent question. I will say, one thing the MCU is doing better than the DCU right now is, I think, building momentum. Because I think that the DCU, and we're talking about right now, because the MCU was not building any momentum, I think, a couple years ago, to be honest with you. But I think right now, the MCU has gotten kind of a straight line path to where they want to go. And I think in order to get to that, they know what they have to do. So they're getting to the Spider-Mans, they're getting to the Avengers Doomsdays, and they're building the correct amount of hype and the correct amount of, I think they're doing what they can to really, set up the stakes well for Avengers Doomsday. Now, I'm not saying that DCU needs to do the same thing. I'm not saying that the DCU has to be building up to this grand event. I will say, though, that if James Gunn really is building up towards a Salvation type event, I don't know if I'm getting as excited as maybe he wants us to be. I don't know, maybe not. But I still think that in terms of just building up excitement for what's to come, I'm interested in what the DCU has to offer, but I'm not as excited for what is to come as I thought I would be. So there is that. And one thing that the DCU is doing better than the MCU, I think the DCU right now, I think it is being more consistent than the MCU. I think the MCU still in this time is kind of all over the place at the moment. We'll see how it all coalesces in Avengers Doomsday. But I think that the DCU, and again, by virtue of it being just James Gunn making these projects, it can afford to be more consistent. And I think that things are lining up a little bit better in terms of, okay, so we have a path to Supergirl, we have a path to Lanterns, Man of Tomorrow. I think that the tone and the style of the DCU and building up this world, it feels more consistent and cohesive than what the MCU is doing right now. That is what I will say. All right, questions here. We have two questions from Jake. Jake with, there's some numbers and letters after that, but Jake asks a couple questions here. Do you want to see DC Studios bring back DC fandom instead of showing up to Comic-Con with one or two things, or James Gunn dropping stuff randomly on social media? Well, actually, James Gunn addressed this in an interview, and he said, sometimes, it's fun to go to Comic-Con, but it's expensive, and sometimes he gets as much traction by just tweeting something out. Now, would I like to see something like DC fandom return? I think so. I think that those events are always really fun to cover. But at the end of the day, whatever James Gunn can do to generate excitement, I think I'm fine with. So honestly, I'm kind of ambivalent at that point. I don't really have a preference to that end. So there is that. Jake's next question: Warner Brothers is up for sale. Yes, Warner Brothers is up for sale. It's not something we've covered on the channel because that is just changing every single day. So waiting for something more definitive to happen before we cover it. But Warner Brothers Discovery is up for sale. So who do you want to see buy it? And DC. List some options here: Paramount, Universal, Netflix, Apple. I don't think I would like Netflix to buy, first of all, Netflix to buy Warner Brothers, because I think I would like a studio that is committed to theaters, right? And Netflix, I just don't think is committed to theaters. Apple, I don't know. Apple has put out some movies like F1 to theaters, and Killers of the Flower Moon, but they're still not, theaters first. So Paramount and Universal seem to make more sense to me. I just would like a company that really is committed to making movies and making them well and making them for the theatrical experience. I think that is what I would like to see. And the final question here, I know this segment has been going for a long, long time. Apologies. Anthony Chobot does pop culture. Thank you so much for submitting the final question here. What's your favorite DCU project thus far? My favorite DCU project thus far is Superman. I've said it before. I don't love any one of the 3 DCU projects, but I don't dislike any of them either. I think Creature Commandos is probably my least favorite, followed by Peacemaker Season 2, and then followed by Superman. And I think that I like Superman in general. It's not the earth-shattering, groundbreaking movie that I think a lot of other people think it is, and that's totally fine, if you do. But for me, I like Superman. I think it's the most consistent out of the 3 DCU projects. I think Creature Commandos' ending was a little bit disappointing, and it was a little bit all over the place. And I think Peacemaker 2, I think I could say almost the exact same thing. The ending was disappointing, and it was a little bit all over the place. But I think both of those projects had promise, and I enjoyed both of those to an extent. But I do think that Superman was my favorite of the 3. Guys, that will end the Ask Me Anything AMA segment. Hopefully, in the future, we'll be able to do more. Maybe when we hit 2,000 subscribers, we can do a live stream or something like that. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys for submitting questions. And yeah, it was really fun, and hopefully we get to do this again. Let's dive into now the future topics. Alrighty, guys, you'd be forgiven if you thought, as of the recording of this segment, today it's October 2025, we're heading into November, but you'd be forgiven if you thought that there were no Star Wars projects coming out in 2026. It's been really, really quiet, and yet we have a movie coming out in The Mandalorian and Grogu coming out in May of 2026, and we actually have a TV show that has quietly, very quietly gone under the radar. The reason that I opened the segment like this is because I feel like there just hasn't been as much fanfare or as much excitement or anticipation about either of these 2 projects in The Mandalorian and Grogu and Ahsoka Season 2. Mandalorian and Grogu released a trailer a few weeks ago, and I feel like it came and went. It was met with almost zero buzz, I feel like, across the internet. You guys can tell me if I'm wrong. If you guys love the trailer, let me know in the comments, because I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. But I feel like, just my general sense, again, not being always plugged into what everyone is thinking, but, being more online just with this YouTube channel, in the movie spaces at least, it feels like that trailer just disappeared. It feels like nobody was really talking about it. I feel like it didn't penetrate into the general masses, as I feel like a good trailer should for a project like this, especially a Star Wars project. And quietly on the other side too, because I was thinking about, are there going to be any Star Wars shows coming out in 2026? Is this going to be the first year since 2019, since when Disney Plus launched with The Mandalorian? Is this going to be the first year where Disney Plus or Star Wars doesn't release a live action show? I guess 2020 they didn't release a live action show, or did they? I think actually maybe Mandalorian season 2 was 2020. Anyways, point being that I was thinking, was this going to be one of the first years since the launch of Disney Plus and Star Wars on Disney Plus that we weren't going to get a show, until I remembered Ahsoka season 2 is coming. And we have some updates now, actually, that this show has quietly been chugging along, and under all of our noses, it's done filming, apparently, because Ahsoka star herself, Rosario Dawson, posted, and then deleted for some reason, a wrap post saying that they have wrapped filming. Now, there was another article then, separately, I think, from Forbes that says it's likely Ahsoka Season 2 will not be coming out until August or September, which I feel like is a little bit of time. Some people have been saying, oh, it's going to be so far away, and this is a delay of some sorts. Well, I feel like it's feasible that if you wrapped filming in late October of 2025, that, yeah, you could get all the visual effects done and things like that, and maybe have it ready for a June or July release. That seems a little crunch, so I get it. I think August or September, honestly, just given the production timeline, seems pretty reasonable. So I think that we have now a pretty I'm going to say definitive because, yes, the release date could change and fluctuate and things like that, but a relatively definitive timeline for what Star Wars is going to look like in 2026. Also, we have Maul Shadowlord, the animated show based on Darth Maul, which I am very, 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 very excited about. But we don't know when that's coming out. But Mandalorian and Grogu in May, late May, I think Memorial Weekend of 2026, and then Ahsoka Season 2 probably coming out in August or September. And we also, in a separate interview, I think, got some clarification or just got some comments about how Ahsoka might have changed from Season 1 to Season 2 from Rosario Dawson. So this is what she had to say. She says, quote, she had more of a strong gravitas at the beginning, and she was a little bit more unflappable. And I'm liking that she's relaxing. She's kind of getting back to her joy. I think those moments with Hayden Christensen and Anakin were so important for her to feel something so she could be more present. And that's what I'm really enjoying. I think we get to explore that a lot more in the second season. I'm really glad we get to add more joy into her life and see her relax a little bit more and work in community a little bit more than she has. I love hearing that. I was somebody who was looking forward to Ahsoka, but still, had some trepidations about the live action show just because I wasn't sure how it was going to translate. And while I think that there are parts of the show that I quite enjoy, I also, and this is as somebody admittedly who is not the biggest fan of Star Wars Rebels, I was very much a Clone Wars kid myself. I watched all Rebels. I thought it was okay. I didn't love it, but seeing that this was basically a Star Wars Rebels live action show, that in itself inherently wasn't a big draw to me. And then I just thought that the story was really weird and messy, and at the end of the show, basically the characters just flip-flopped, and it was weird and bizarre in that way. But I will say, when we all thought Rosario Dawson was great casting, and then I watched the show and I was like, why is she so serious the entire show? I get that she's older and she's wiser and she's more of a veteran now than she was in the Clone Wars days. Obviously, we saw that in contrast with the younger Ahsoka in the flashbacks. But I still think that the essence of Ahsoka, she just felt very flat as a character. So to hear Rosario Dawson say this about her character and about Ahsoka in Season 2 is actually, to me, quite encouraging. And I am actually very excited to see just maybe an Ahsoka that's getting back to that joy that really propelled the character. Again, Ahsoka was not just a happy-go-lucky character all the time. Towards the end of the Clone Wars, she was a very serious character. In Rebels, I think I loved Ahsoka in Rebels, honestly. That was a serious character that still had the essence of that younger version of herself in Clone Wars. So I'm excited to see what they do with Season 2. Guys, what do you think of these comments from Rosario Dawson about Ahsoka in Season 2? And just the fact that Season 2 is coming in 2026. It's probably coming in August or September. Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, as we gear up for Daredevil Born Again Season 2, let's talk about Daredevil Born Again Season 3, not to get ahead of ourselves, but we have some more details here, courtesy of one Mr. Wilson Bethel, who plays, of course, Benjamin Poindexter, aka Bullseye. Now, Bullseye was a character that I believe, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe was actually not a part of the original Daredevil Born Again Season 1 script. I think that this was a character that was added particularly in the rewrites and reshoots for the show. He only appears in episode 1, where he kills, for spoiler alert, he kills Foggy Nelson, and then he reappears, I think, in episodes 8 and 9. So kind of clear that he was a character that was added very much later on in reshoots, at least from what I know. That being said, because obviously this was a character that really made an impression in Daredevil Season 3, the original Netflix show, this is a character that now looks like is going to be having a much bigger role now that Daredevil Born Again Season 2 is going to be much more streamlined and connected season, unlike the previous season, which was kind of cut up and mashed together based on different visions of the show. So Wilson Bethel was at a convention, and he gave a few interesting quotes about Bullseye in Season 2, but more interestingly, about Season 3. This is what he had to say. He says, quote, "There are whole new avenues of Dex's interesting, messed up psyche that we get to explore, and I'm scrolling down here. And there's some really, really fun stuff that's on the way for Bullseye and for Dex." He says, "I think the coolest Bullseye fight sequence that we have yet to see in the show is part of Season 2. One that is, expletive, awesome." So that's talking about Season 2, which is great. It's great to hear that he's excited about Season 2. But then he gets on to talk about Season 3. This is what he has to say about Season 3. Quote, "As some of you might know, we've already got picked up for another new season that we will start doing next year. We'll have more Bullseye on the way, and Kingpin, and all the rest." So that's interesting, right? Because that is going to show that Bullseye is a character that is not going to be a one and done, or well, not one and done, but he's not going to be finished in Daredevil Born Again Season 2, but rather he's going to have some kind of role to play in Season 3, which I think look, I mean, it depends on where the character goes. I think there have been hints based on set photos and things like that he might even be an ally for Daredevil and for Karen Page at some point, which is a very interesting concept given the fact that he is the one who killed Foggy Nelson. So we'll see where that goes. But still, I think that it's an interesting arc to go with this character. And I also wonder too, right, as we're starting to build up towards whatever's going to happen in season 2 and season 3, you know, I think that the Daredevil Kingpin story is at the center of most of what Daredevil does in these shows and in these stories. But one has to wonder, are there going to be different villains for Daredevil? Like, Kingpin might take a backseat at a certain point, like he did in season 2, and then he came back in season 3. But Bullseye was the main villain of season 3, was one of the main villains of season 3 as Kingpin made his return. So I'd be very curious because Daredevil Born Again season 1, Kingpin was very clearly still the villain, right? But will Daredevil Born Again start to explore other villains as well, and where does Bullseye fit into all that? I think that all that is very interesting because Bullseye is such an interesting and I would say complex character in the sense that he's just unexpected. He's unpredictable. You don't know where this character is going to go. You don't know who he's going to ally with. You don't know what he's going to do. I mean, his fight scene at the beginning of Daredevil Born Again was crazy, and it was just pure chaos. And that is kind of what Bullseye represents, is pure chaos. So I'm very interested to see as we head into season 3. First of all, at the end of season 2, what is the status quo? Is Kingpin still going to be the central antagonist for Daredevil stories moving forward? Not that I'm saying that it's uninteresting, right? I love the Kingpin Daredevil stuff that's going on here. But I also wonder, okay, when are we going to start to fold in other characters, and how are existing characters like Bullseye going to fit into that scheme as well? Very curious to see. But it's still good to see, still good to hear that Bullseye has a place in all the craziness that's going to be going on. Also, he mentions Kingpin, so Kingpin confirmed to be in season 3, as if that wasn't obvious. I mean, unless they did something crazy and killed Kingpin at the end of season 2. But I seriously doubt that. So those are some details on season 3. Daredevil, Born Again season 3, Bullseye and Kingpin will be back, and there will be a lot more hijinks to ensue from there. Guys, what do you make of these comments from Wilson Bethel? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys. Well, just as one series finishes up with Peacemaker season 2, we have yet another to talk about here. And actually also Gen V season 2 just wrapped up, but we have another TV show to talk about. Let's talk about the first episode of the new HBO MAX series, Welcome to Derry. So this is going to be a full spoiler discussion for the new HBO series from the franchise, the It franchise, based on the books from Stephen King. If you have not seen the episode, rather, make sure to save this segment, save this podcast, and save the episode for later, and come back once you have, because this is going to be full spoilers. We are going to dive into the episode in all of its detail. You have been warned. Okay, guys, so I have, just to give a little bit of context here, because I've said this many times before in previous episodes, but this is something I think it's just, it's just fun to know, because you're watching this channel, you're watching this review, that I think it's just good to know where the reviewer is coming from, right? So I personally am somebody who is actually really not a big fan of horror. I'm not going to say I hate horror holistically, but horror is the genre that I probably seek out the least. I just don't, I don't like being scared. I don't like gruesome things. I just don't like those kinds of aspects of horror. I don't get any thrills from being scared. I really don't. That all being said, the It franchise somehow, to me, has transcended that to the point where I actually really do enjoy those two films. Well, the first film more so than the second one. The second one I thought was okay, but again, I think that those two films holistically did something that I think a lot of horror films fail to do, which is, again, just the horror films, a lot of them are just sort of the scares, right? They're just there for the scares, and they're not there for the story at all. The It films, I feel like, though, are based on books, right? And are based on a book, I think. And I think that they really dive into more than just the scares. It's about the characters, right? It's about the kids in the first movie, and it's about them as adults in the second movie. I think that it's really a testament to characters and to writing well developed characters in the context of, yes, some terrifying things that are going on in that world with Pennywise the clown. So when they announced It Welcome to Derry, and when the first trailers came out, I was thinking, I find myself rarely excited about horror, but I am actually pretty excited about this show because I think HBO does some really great stuff. I think this world is ripe to do a kind of show like this, and I think the quality, I had no reason to doubt the quality. So here we are. We have watched the first episode of It Welcome to Derry, and what a fantastic first episode. a couple things, just to start out this, before we dive into all the great things about this episode, in my opinion, a couple things that I thought, yeah, maybe things to monitor, things to watch. But overall, I mean, what a fantastic first episode, in my opinion. So just to get those things out of the way, a couple things that I think, I don't think there are a whole lot of negatives in this first episode, but a couple things that I was like, okay, let's kind of keep an eye on that and see where they go from there. First of all, I do think it is a little hard to ignore. And I don't know if this is based on part of the book or whatever, or something Stephen King wrote. I don't know if this is completely original or not. I will say, this show thus far bears a lot of similarity to the first movie. I mean, I don't know how much you could deviate from it, I suppose. But, I mean, come on, right? Lonely kid goes to do something and tries to run away. And then, I guess Georgie in the first movie doesn't run away. But, little kid, is troubled and goes and does something and gets kidnapped by what we assume is Pennywise the Clown. Although, I don't know what that demon thing is at the end of the episode. But gets kidnapped and is the impetus for a bunch of other kids trying to find that kid. And then the other kids kind of band up and talk about the things that are haunting them. And then also there's, mysterious things going on. They even go to the library at one point and they go look up things. So a lot of the story beats of this first episode thus far are admittedly pretty reminiscent of a lot of the things that happened in the first movie. It's just one episode. I don't know where or if at all how this show is going to deviate from what is happening or what happens in the first movie. I understand that part of the premise of this universe is that it's cyclical, right? I forget how many years, it's 28 years or whatever. X amount of years, Pennywise comes back and haunts the people there and haunts the kids there and all that kind of stuff. I get that. But I'm just saying that it is a little reminiscent of the first movie. And that was one of my fears heading into this show, to be honest with you, is that it was going to be too similar to the first movie. But that all being said, I just think, right, like I said before, horror is horror. And there were plenty of times throughout this episode where I turned the volume way down. And I don't think there was anything in this episode in particular that I was like, I can't look at it per se. There was something like The Substance. I couldn't watch half of that movie. That was crazy. I don't think there was anything in this episode in particular that was like that. But there were good elements of horror and things like that for people who enjoy that. But to me, right, the real big draw of this episode is the character work. One of the best things that the writing of this show and the writing of this universe does is it explores a deep human emotion, and that is guilt. Guilt is such a powerful emotion to explore, where these kids feel, I mean, if any of us were in that situation, I think her name's Lily. If any of us were in the situation that Lily was in, of, am I the one who pushed Maddie away? Am I the one? And you just feel this overwhelming sense of guilt, right? And even the other two kids, Teddy and Phil, I believe, they also feel a lot of guilt for this. And that is what Pennywise feeds on, right? It's like guilt and vulnerability of children. But these are real human emotions. And I love that most of this episode is an exploration of that, an exploration of how these kids are feeling in the wake of something horrific like that happening to somebody that they know in Maddie. And of course, I mean, it's just creepy and terrifying to see him. First of all, the opening sequence in the car is just crazy, and it's horrifying. It is horrifying. And then, of course, the theater scene is very reminiscent of some things that happened in the first It movie. But again, I think that the exploration of a lot of those themes, it's really, really incredible. The stuff about the military guy, I don't remember his name, being attacked in the middle of the night. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Is that Pennywise, or is that whatever demonic forces are in Derry? I'm not sure. Or is this just a military kind of subplot here? This is taking place in 1962, I believe. So it's in the backdrop of the Cold War and whatnot. So I don't know. I'm sure that Pennywise will obviously have a part to play in whatever's going on there, but hard to say at this point. Also, I don't even know if we're dealing... I keep saying Pennywise because, of course, Pennywise is going to be the big presence in the show. His face is on the HBO Max banner for this show. But how big of a part is he going to play? We saw in the trailer, actually, that we might be seeing Pennywise's origin story. Whether or not that's a flashback or it's actually part of the show is to be seen, because I don't know what that demon creature is at the end of this episode. Is that Pennywise? I doubt it. What is that thing? And where did it come from? And Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you guys who are much more well-versed in the Stephen King universe will let me know, but I have no idea what that thing is. I'm going to be honest, in some shots, it looks really terrifying. And I will say the ending of this episode is great. Great in the sense of it is terrifying and it is wrong and it is horrible, but great in the sense of the tension and the stakes that it sets up for this entire series. You get to know these two kids and their sister, I think, and immediately it looks like they're wiped out, and the image of Lily holding that hand, it's great. Like that part is great. In terms of story and in terms of stakes and visuals and all that kind of stuff. Again, I don't love horror, but I love thrillers, I love mysteries, and I love stakes, suspense. That was just great. But yeah, I mean, in some of the shots at the end of the episode, that creature looked a little plasticky, a little silly, I'm not gonna lie. In some shots, it looked really, really, really scary. But in some shots, I was like, I can kind of tell that it's a puppet or some kind of CG model or whatever. Looks a little fake to me. But all that being said, I thought this was a fantastic first episode. I think, I'm going to say I don't know where we go from here, but I think in the best way possible. If there are so many different directions now that we could go, that I'm just so excited to see what happens next. And I can't wait. This is going to be, I think it's going to be a fantastic show just based on this first episode. Guys, have you seen the first episode to It? Welcome to Derry. I'm hoping to be covering most, if not all, of the episodes from here on out. Let me know what you thought about this first episode in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, well some might say it's a little too early to be talking about the next DCU project. The DCU just wrapped up for 2025 after all. We just talked about the last project, Peacemaker Season 2, and yet, in actuality, we have another project pretty soon coming on the horizon. That is Lanterns. Lanterns is surprisingly close, actually. We don't have an exact release date, but I believe that James Gunn had confirmed a few times that Lanterns, the TV show that is going to follow the Green Lantern Corps, John Stewart, Hal Jordan, and then some cameos and appearances by Guy Gardner and Sinestro. That series is going to be coming out before Supergirl. Now, Supergirl is coming out in July 2026 at the moment. It might get pushed up to May based on some rumors. But for now, that indicates Lanterns is coming out in the first half of 2026, maybe even in the spring, which means it might be coming in just a few months. I mean, the Thanksgiving and Christmas windows are going to close very quickly, and then we're going to be in 2026, and Lanterns is going to be just around the corner. And we've seen one image, right? It's almost like, remember before the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer came out, we only saw that one set image that they released of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine and Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, and that was it. And then they finally released the trailer. It feels similar. We've only gotten that one image of Hal Jordan and John Stewart, and really nothing else other than the basic premise of it being a kind of an intergalactic true detective mystery. But now we actually have some confirmation on just some plot details and character details, which I think are really pointing to what I think could be a fascinating show. So let's start out here. There are a couple sets of quotes that I want to discuss here. First one being about more of the visual style and the power set of the Lanterns in this series. I think all of this stuff is really interesting. And then we'll talk more about the character of John Stewart and his relationship with Hal Jordan in particular. So Aaron Pierre and the showrunner, who I think his name is Chris Mundy, they were talking in an interview, and they had this to say. Chris Mundy had this to say about the powers of John Stewart. He says, quote, "One thing we attacked from the beginning was that the Green Lantern powers, a lot of it is based in creativity. To manifest things from the Lantern rings, you've got to manifest something from your brain, but also kind of from your soul. What does that look like? What does it feel like?" I think this is all fascinating, by the way. Let's continue on. I imagine it's not much different than being a sculptor or a painter. And Aaron had to be able to sell that John could have that ability. And that's what he did. He understood that John would appreciate that aspect of that power, of their powers. We always joked that Hal just wants to hit everything with a big green fist. John was a Marine major, or Marine sniper rather, which requires a certain kind of focus and diligence. After the Marines, he becomes an architect, so there's an artistic side to him. And the quotes go on to talk about how he's more creative and kind of unleashing his creative side. So I think on the one hand, we'll dive into those second quotes in just a second. But on the one hand, I think this is awesome, right? I always love power sets that have to do with energy manipulation. I think that they're super cool. I think Eternals kind of touched on that a little bit. At the end of the day, it was all golden energy, and it all, I mean, they had different powers, but it all looked the same. So I'd be very curious to see how Lanterns approaches that visual style. I love also how there's going to be a visual and personality difference, a very clear dichotomy between Hal Jordan and John Stewart. I think that you need to have that in a show like this, where these two are going to be the leads and they're going to be in that buddy cop dynamic. Speaking of that buddy cop dynamic, let's read this other set of quotes here about Lanterns that Aaron Pierre had to say. First of all, he talks about the fact that I totally forgot about this, that he was cast in one of the original iterations of the MCU Blade movie. And he talks about the fact that he was so excited, which is, again, a bummer. But then he was disappointed, and he learned the lesson that you're not really there. Nothing has really happened until you step foot on set. And even then, we've seen in Hollywood that things can happen. Batgirl and Solo, a Star Wars story, which came out, but it was very different. So, yeah, I feel really bad for him, but it seems like he learned a lesson here, and he's gone on to have incredible success, of course, with Mufasa the Lion King, and then also now with Lanterns. But he and Mundy go on to talk about the relationship and what the show is like between Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan. They say that it's a, quote, buddy cop show as a superhero show. And they have to say, quote, our show is, in a lot of ways, about replacement. When should someone step aside, and when is it time for the next person to take the reins? The push and pull between these two characters is really important. Again, fascinating. Goes on to say, so much of the power that Jon has is by not taking the bait, understanding that you lose your power if you're yelling and screaming. That's what we're trying to convey. He knows he belongs, so he doesn't have to overcompensate. There's a real balance there that's innately inside of Aaron. He's big, he's an intimidating presence just physically. I think it's all really great. I think I love hearing the fact that there is a very clear character-driven arc, a very character-oriented story that's being told here, and not just hey, let's have a Green Lantern with a big green fist, which we're going to have. It looks like Hal Jordan is going to be that Green Lantern with the big green fist. But I think that, at the end of the day, if this show is Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan and their dynamic together, and I think back to when we were talking about a year ago, initial casting for Hal Jordan, and everyone was like, we want this actor. I'm not saying that he was part of the rumors. I forget who was part of the original rumors and fan castings, but let's just say a Glenn Powell type or Jacob Elordi type or whatever. And everyone was like, yeah, let's get that actor. We didn't know what the story was. And when they announced that it was Kyle Chandler, everyone was like, what? Even though I was like, let's see what happens. And I think that now, given what this story is going to be, and of course the story has to be good, right? But if the story is good and it warrants this, I think it's going to be amazing. And so it's another lesson in not judging casting too early, because we just don't know what the story is going to be. So I am personally, based on these comments about the visual style, about the nature of the show, it being more of a personal show that is wrapped in the superhero genre, which again, I think are the best kinds of shows and movies. Captain America, The Winter Soldier, right? Unabashedly a spy thriller, while also just featuring Captain America and Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. Other movies that come to mind are The Batman. I think The Batman is a great crime thriller that is just a Batman movie. So again, I think that these kinds of comments and quotes make me very, very, very excited for Lanterns as we look ahead to 2026. Guys, what do you make of these new comments about Lanterns, about Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart, about the story, and about the kinds of characters that we're going to get to see? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, at long last, the wait is almost over. Stranger Things Season 5, Stranger Things 5, is coming out in just over 3 weeks. That is incredible. It is crazy, because I feel like the waits between these seasons have been excruciatingly long, as evidenced by the fact that most of these actors are in their mid-20s now, early to mid-20s, and they started out in season 1 as young kids, and even season 4 they were, late teens, early 20s, but yeah, I mean, a lot of time has passed. That all being said, I don't care. I don't care anymore. Whatever. Mike and Dustin and Lucas and Will, they don't look like high schoolers. Whatever. Stranger Things is one of my favorite shows. I feel like in the popular culture discourse, pop culture, I don't know why I said popular, pop culture discourse, and especially in people around, who don't pay as much attention to movies and TV shows and things like that, but who watch Stranger Things, or at least started to watch Stranger Things, I feel like the discourse around Stranger Things has been interestingly negative for a while. I feel like it's become a popular thing just to not like the popular thing, and I think nothing says that truer than Stranger Things. I feel like I have a lot of friends who are like, yeah, I don't like Stranger Things anymore. Isn't it really bad now? And I'm like, I mean, that's totally fine, by the way. If you guys just don't like Stranger Things, that's totally fine. But what's the basis for that? And they're like, well, people say that. And I'm like, yeah, but have you watched the show recently? And they're like, no, not after season 1, just as an example, right? So I feel like for some reason the discourse has turned negative just because it's such a huge and popular show. I love the show. yeah, some people don't like season 3 because it's a little goofier. That's fine. I really like season 3. I don't care. I don't think there's been a bad season of Stranger Things, honestly. I think maybe if I had to rank them, and eventually, maybe we'll do this in 2026. At some point, we'll do a rewatch of Stranger Things because I have been meaning to, and I just don't have enough time. At this point, it's coming out so soon. I do not have time to even. I probably won't even have time to get through season 1 by the time that season 4 or season 5 drops its first batch of episodes. We'll see though. I'm looking forward to doing a full series rewatch at some point. So maybe we'll do that on the channel. But I mean, I feel like if I had to do a quick ranking of the seasons, I would probably go 1, 4, or 4, 1. It's so close. 1 and 4 are pretty close. And then maybe 3 and 2. I like 3 a lot. Honestly, I really like 3. Anyways, so season 5 is coming. We got our first trailer a while ago, and I liked it. And this new trailer for season 5 has just come out. And while I don't think it's a groundbreaking trailer or anything like that, I think that, the things you see in the trailer, honestly, are pretty generic. Not in terms of the shots and things like that. Some of the shot composition it's just incredible. That scene, I cannot wait for whatever that action scene is outside where the demo dogs or demogorgons are jumping all over buildings, and it's shot so well and so beautifully, and it looks like that's the scene where Vecna is going to show up again and he's going to grab Will. What a crazy ending to that trailer. We're going to get to that in a second. That sequence I am so looking forward to because it looks so well shot and it looks great, honestly. But otherwise, it's a lot of things that we have seen before in other trailers or in the other trailer, and it's a lot of what we know already. Oh, this is the last stand, and Nancy gives that stereotypical line of he's going to take over the world, and I'm like, yeah, we know, we know. You don't have to say it out loud, but just for the sake of the trailer, sure, he's going to take over the world. But I mean, there are great shots in this trailer, and you get to see all the characters. It looks like 11 is so determined at this point. She looks determined. All these things. It looks great. It looks fun. It looks great. But as I was watching this trailer, I was thinking to myself, it's missing that kind of build up though to that moment at the end of the trailer, or it's kind of missing that oomph moment that some of the other trailers had as well. But what I mean by some of the other trailers, I distinctly remember season 4's trailers. I loved both of Stranger Things season 4's trailers. The Separate Ways one with the song Separate Ways playing, amazing. The one with running up that hill, amazing. For some reason, those trailers had really struck me as having a tremendous build up to just what those just building up the anticipation, right, of what was going on in those seasons. It was incredible. It was really, really, really incredible. I still watch those trailers once in a while just because I love them. And I feel like the season 5 trailers haven't had that. But when it counts, when this trailer came to an end and Vecna is walking towards Will and then he levitates Will and he says, what does he say? He says, I need you to do this for me one last time or something like that. I got chills. I got goosebumps. I got slightly emotional. That is the core of Stranger Things. The Duffer Brothers have been giving a lot of interviews recently about the season, about the show, and they're saying, yeah, it's increased in scale. Yeah, it's increased in action, but the emotional core, it's still with these kids. I love that about this show. It has never once lost sight of the fact that its strength is not in how crazy it can get, not in the mind flayer, not in Vecna, it's in the characters. And I mean, there are a lot of sad shots in here. There's shots of a lot of characters crying. Nancy, the one with Nancy crying in front of the sink is the one that scares me the most. Is it Steve? It's probably Steve. The way that he hugs Dustin in the shot right after, it's probably Steve. But any number of these characters could be gone. 11, literally any of these characters could be gone. We see, also I think we see Lucas carrying Max around as well. She was in a coma at the end of season 4. This is going to be a crazy season. It's going to be a crazy, crazy, crazy season. I cannot wait. I am just, this is the culmination of one of the biggest journeys I've been on with a television show. I didn't start in season 1, but I caught on right, I think, as season 3 had come out, or maybe right after that. And after that, I was just hooked, and this was it's been one of my favorite shows. So I cannot wait. It's still doing the binge model in a sense where, yeah, it's splitting up 2 volumes and then doing the finale at a separate time. So that is, a little bit annoying because we can't do week by week episode breakdowns. And, I'm going to have to try to cram in those 3 episodes during Thanksgiving, and that's going to be really annoying. Obviously prioritizing family and things like that, but still trying to get those episodes in. So we'll try to cover the first volume, hopefully the week after, but we'll have to see about that. But yeah, guys, I don't know about you guys. I'd be very curious to hear what your thoughts are on Stranger Things in general, because again, I think the consensus around me for people who have not been as plugged into the show, has been, yeah, I thought the show was bad now. And I'm like, really? You know, I mean, if you think so, but I don't agree. So anyways, that is what I think. Guys, what do you think about this trailer for Stranger Things Season 5? Are you excited? Are you as excited as me? Or are you maybe a little bit more nervous? I'd love to hear both of your thoughts, both conversations in the comments down below. And everybody, that will do it for episode number 102 of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, crazy number. I'm never going to stop saying it. It's 102 episodes of anything. It's crazy. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, make sure to do so. We are on the road to 2,000 subscribers. Give a like, leave a comment, all of that good stuff. And if you are interested in the audio-only platforms where the podcast is out first, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Overcast, we will be there. A little bit of a lighter week on the news, but it's going to get crazy. It is going to get so crazy in November and December. We're going to talk about our favorite movies of the year. I'm starting to lean in a little bit more into the Oscar movies, some of the contenders, trying to see that some here or there, just based on speculation and which movies are getting buzz. And then, of course, your Wicked for Goods, your Zootopia 2s, Wake Up Dead Man, Avatar Fire and Ash. It's going to get crazier and crazier as the year goes on. And I'm very excited. So make sure to subscribe, stay tuned for all that good stuff. And guys, that will do it for episode 102 of the Access Blockbusters Pod. I will see you guys in the next one.